I would like to this evening take you on a personal journey on my take on making amateur film documentaries. At the outset, please do not take what I do as being the correct way to do things. I've had to learn the hard way over many years, many years, due to my very remote location in the extreme north of Scotland. And it's only really in the last 4 years that I've produced some award-winning films. And that's in the main thanks to me setting up the virtual video group, of whom one of your Reading members, Charles, was one of the three founder members way back in 2021. We now have 70 members, mainly from within the United Kingdom, but also in America and in Europe, and between 28 to 48 attending the monthly Zoom meetings. So the VVG exposed me to similar-minded people with a huge talent of filmmaking skills, encouraging me to expand my old skill set accordingly. So the agenda I've chosen for tonight, hopefully, has that come up on your screen okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah. Is basically an introduction to amateur documentary filmmaking, planning and research, production, post-production. But I would like to share with me my raison d'etre. In my case, living in a subarctic remote area of outstanding natural beauty, this inspires me to make films that mean something to me about the location I live in for both local and wider audiences, presented in a way that capture the essence and uniqueness of the area. And I am quite confident that I think you'll enjoy certainly the scenery in some of these areas and some of the stories that have been told. And it is good to be able, as an independent or as an amateur filmmaker, to actually do what you want to do. You're not basically paid for it. You're not having to raise money. You're basically just doing what you want to do and present it to a wider audience. Now, I've been a filmmaker since the late 70s, and before kids came along, I made a couple of local documentaries on Super 8 in them days. I don't know if maybe you're all too young enough to remember that. And I joined the IAC, that's the Institute of Amateur Cinematographers. Got a couple of Blue Seal Awards in the early 80s, which really turned it into a hobby for me ever since. As some of you here will know tonight, amateur filmmaking can be a solo experience where you have to do everything yourself, albeit maybe with help from family and friends, that is. I think in essence of why I enjoy making films as I have complete control over what I make. Being hundreds of miles away from the nearest club or society, I have had to learn the hard way. As it is documentaries I tend to make, we have to remind ourselves of what the purpose of a documentary film is about, whether it's amateur, independent, or professional. And it should portray real life, local events. Audiences want to feel like they're being taken on a journey while watching a film. We must focus on issues, such as, say, climate change, loss of an environment, wildlife, political issues, or record a local event. The documentary should attempt to bring about awareness of an issue. It should also educate and entertain, but always engage the audience. A good documentary is usually crafted to engage both visually and emotionally if you can do it. It's a film you want to watch. It is definitely not a lecture. This is usually as a result of two things, and that is the filmmaker can be a very good storyteller, and two, the filmmaker masters the art or craft of filmmaking. Now, we have unique challenges and advantages. Amateur filmmakers often encounter challenges like limited or no budget and very scarce resources, having to do everything by themselves or by co-opting family and friends, or in your case, members of your club or society, which can impact their production abilities. But creative freedom in amateur filmmaking Amateur filmmakers benefit from greater creative freedom, allowing them to explore unconventional storytelling techniques, unique narratives, and a way they want to portray their subject of choice without interference or with any budget concerns. And also authentic storytelling. The amateur or independent sector empowers filmmakers to tell authentic, relatable stories that can often resonate deeply with audiences. Nowadays, creating YouTube and Vimeo channels gives the amateur or independent filmmaker access to an extremely wide audience, varied audience, where the filmmaker can judge the success or failure of their productions by basically simple public reaction to their work. Now, definition and significance of amateur documentaries. The best documentaries are the ones that come from a personal space, in my view. So before anything else, you need to find a story idea that gets you excited first and foremost. Amateur documentaries are films made outside mainstream studio systems, highlighting unique stories, personal stories, local stories, unusual stories from a very personal perspective. The amateur filmmaker does, in many cases, everything from start to finish with, as I said earlier, minimal resources, but has the unique opportunity that many professionals can never realize, and that is to create a film that is totally under their control from start to finish. This is what really inspires me to hopefully tell the stories and history that will resonate with people anywhere. And I've just shown you on this slide just a few stills from some of the films I've made. My Thin Place, which you'll see at the end of this, Into the Flame, the very popular Fly by the Flow Country film that has been shown in London the whole time at COP30. Echoes of Orkney, that's my neighbouring islands, the Orkney Islands, and the one that was entered for Unica in Europe, The Power of Water. So how did I get into this? Well, I'm of an age, I'm 71. I suspect, like some of you in Reading, I have from my teenage years been into filmmaking, initially using Super 8 film, being hooked on creating magic and filming a sequence of shots, then using a physical cement splicer. Probably very few of you this evening will know what that is. Being creative to start editing the clips to tell a short story. Maybe after a lot of practice, make a film. Maybe then get a magnetic sound stripe put on the film and then create that narrative story in both sound, image and sound. Finally, you projected as you did in them days on a 6 feet or 8 feet screen, maybe enter it for the London International Film Festival, and then feel very pleased when your first film, in my case, The Prophecies of the Brahms here, about a Highland Nostradamus that predicted accurately the main events that took place in the Highlands way back in 1700. And it managed to get a Blue Seal Award, which wasn't bad for a first effort. As all my films were all of local interest, I was frequently asked to do film presentations and talks in the 1980s for, Rotary clubs, the Scottish Rural Women's Institutes, things like that, all these organisations. But you have to have emotional engagement. Now, given my proximity to the mountains on the west coast and in the Highlands here, I'm a hill walker. I'm also into high tea. I retired a few years ago. I was an IT manager at the Dunray nuclear plant up here in Scotland. I'm into local geology, and I also happen to be an amateur filmmaker. I therefore naturally create narratives that resonate emotionally with myself, trying to draw viewers into my story and getting them to feel the same emotion I feel about the subject or the place that I feel is so special. It's not a very easy thing to do, but when it works, it is very rewarding. You have to, as a documentary filmmaker, understand the subject matter. You really have to understand, to create authentic and compelling documentaries. Research is absolutely pivotal. My documentaries in the main tell stories of the region or the country where I live and that I feel passionate about. I try to convey that passion to the viewer, and I'll be honest, with varying degrees of success over the years. The narrative effectively conveying the narrative involves skillful editing, sound design, and cinematography. For the films I undertake, I use a combination of a camcorder, a drone, iPhone footage, graphics to convey a range of images to tell the story. Also, I use many apps and sometimes AI tools basically to get the best or to get the best possible out of every documentary I make. Now, in the planning and research stage, which I find very interesting, this really gets me going. It and editing is my two main. The actual filming is actually not so great for me, believe it or not. In the planning phase, where we're nowadays, there are so many tools available to assist the amateur filmmaker. And I use every single one of the products that you see on the screen. That's Google Earth Studio, very, very handy for location shots, zooming into your area of interest. YouTube, obviously, Blender for doing geological maps, ChatGPT to get inspiration, Suno for music generation, and Copilot as well for getting assistant with narration and ideas. But before you use these tools, you need to really choose a documentary narration style that suits you. And myself, and this is not necessarily the right way, but I choose three ways of doing this. And it's either poetic, expository, or observational. Now, poetic documentary aims to evolve or evoke a mood and a tone through thought-provoking and evocative visuals, rather than simply relating a narrative. I tend to use this approach in some of my films, and we're showing a good example of this at the end of the presentation. The second is expository documentaries. And these are the ones most widely used, are the most widely used forms of documentary filmmaking, certainly professionally. Expository documentaries aim to inform the audience on a specific topic or issue, often through a narrator or expert interviews. Examples of expository documentaries are The Blue Planet, very good example, An Inconvenient Truth. My 2022 film, The Power of Water, was one of the three films that was selected to represent the UK at Unica that year, and that was of that type, very much expository. The third is observational documentaries, and I must admit I have never tried this out, but it's observational documentaries captures reality as it is. It's like fly on the wall. The aim of observational documentaries is to let the film speak for itself, allowing the audience to observe the natural flow of events and participants. So, what are the narration styles to use when you're making a documentary? You can have interview-led documentaries, which are based on interviews with key people involved in the topic of the film. You can have presenter-led documentaries, which are narrated by a presenter, or you can get narrator-led documentaries, using the narrator to guide the viewer through the film, often providing additional information and insights. So when you have chosen your topic and style, you can then do the hard slog in researching your topics using online tools such as Copilot, ChatGPT, to get started with prompts and adapt to your own storytelling style. Watch similar videos on your topic on YouTube to get inspiration, or television programs. Look into Google Earth Studio for animating establishing locations, animation tools for any explanations, drawings, diagrams, animated cartoons, or process breakdowns that you want to use in the documentary. Very, very handy. And it's at this stage I find it's really interesting because you're basically using all these tools to a lesser or greater degree to enhance what will be your work of art in the case of your finished product. Now, this is where the key comes. You don't have to do this, but I tend to. You've now got the bare, by now you've got the bare bones of what you want to construct, and I usually split it up into introduction, main, and conclusion. Then flesh out each section using a detailed documentary script template. An example of the documentary script I use is shown on the slide at the left-hand side there. It's for a long-term film I'm working on, 3 Billion Years in the Making, which is a story about the Northwest Highlands UNESCO Geopark. I tend to have a general idea of the three sections and start planning the filming. I tend to undertake. However, all this must be seen as a work in progress. This script will evolve and it will change somewhat throughout the filming process as new takes may be included. It may grow, only to be maybe cut back significantly at the final editing stage. At this stage of the planning, any interviews required should be planned and organised. In my own case, I tend to use poetry, song lyrics, or local dialect in some of my films. This has to be written by myself or others beforehand, so the documentary script can be updated, such as the scenes shot match the lyrics to the best effect. An example, the first two scenes of my new project are broken down as shown, and I'll just go over the first two shots. So the first column is the scene. So basically my introduction shot is an animation using Google Earth Studio. And the video that has been rendered from that is basically the Earth globe zooming through the clouds to the outline of the Northwest Highlands Geopark in northwest Scotland, dissolving into a tracking 3D rendered landscape from Ullapool to Loch Eriboll. So it's basically all done by Google Earth Studio, and that is the opening shot. The narrator is voiceover, that's probably myself. And what I'm going to say basically is the Northwest Highlands UNESCO Geopark is a land where ancient landscapes tell tales of Earth's deep past. Stretching across the stunning terrain of northern Scotland, this geopark is not just a testament to natural beauty, but also a gateway to understanding the geological forces that have shaped our planet over billions of years. So we moved on now to the second scene. The on-screen text is the main film title at some point. That can vary, held on the globe zoom to tracking outline, and the main intro theme I have already generated using Suno. It's AI generated the theme. There's no B-roll and there's no interview for that first scene. So now we have the second scene, which is on your left, the opening video, and it's a shot of the Lewisian gneiss landscape. That's the oldest rocks in Europe, which are on a small segment about 50 miles west of me here in Wick. And there's a close-up then of the 3 billion-year-old gneiss rocks in the what we call the Knock and Lochan context. Shown it's in its basically in it's in the way that it appears. It's basically very much like it's a landscape that's just been left after the last ice age. It's the lowest population density in Europe, this area up here, so very much untouched by human hand. And this time, though, I've got B-roll because I want to use a stock volcanic eruption followed by eroded landscape. So the narration for the first shot will be, as the narrator says, as we embark on this journey, we will explore a region that boasts the oldest rocks in Europe, dating back nearly 3 billion years. These ancient formations provide a window into the early history of the planet. Cut then to the B-roll, revealing a story of tectonic upheaval, volcanic activity, and the relentless power of erosion. So I think you'll get what I mean. Now, it's important you can be as accurate as you want with this, but it will change. It definitely changes. You'll find things when you're filming, oh, I should add that Therefore, it has to evolve. It should never be set in stone, but it is very handy, or I find it extremely handy to write this out and have it as a framework for basically a film, especially a film that may be 10, 15 minutes long. No doubt you'll have questions on this at the end, and I'll be more than happy to get your views on whether you think this is useful or maybe not, as the case may be. So we then move into production. So you've now got your documentary script completed. Although I say completed, I don't. I mean, you've got the bare bones and you know what you're doing and you roughly know what you're going to film. You move into the production phase. In my case, a lot of my films are made in the subarctic latitude in the far north of Scotland, where the weather can be a real issue even when nice. There is always wind up here in the far north. I can rarely record decent audio, even with dead cats, and even my tripod shakes in a constant winds between 30 and 60 mile an hour that we can get even in summer. As an example, I was filming in late May for my film 3 Billion Years in the Making about the Northwest Highlands Geopark. And I climbed the mountain Canisp to the west of me here. It's about 2,800 feet, taking my iPhone, Osmo gimbal, and drone in my backpack. Now, this far north, there are no paths up the mountains. It's basically a very remote and windswept area, so it's map and compass. And it was an 8-mile trip up and back. The weather was absolutely gorgeous, beautiful and sunny, northern Arctic sky, beautiful blue, but as usual, windy. Near the summit, the wind, although a warm wind, it was 50 mile an hour with higher gusts. It was far too high to allow the drone to take off. In fact, I did try, but the wind physically blew the drone off the level rock I had placed it to take off. So I had no option but to move down about 600 feet to a spot where I could take off safely. I used the drone to get some amazing slow panoramic sweeps of the Ascent Mountains in the geopark, and also using drone tracking shots of me walking up the mountain. Even though the wind was about 40 to 50 mile an hour, the pictures were absolutely rock steady. I use a Mavic Air 2S, and it really is a very, very good drone. Very, very pleased with it. I also filmed myself at various places talking to camera using the iPhone and gimbal, describing the geology of the mountain and the unseasonal dry weather we've had since February. We've had up here in the north, resulting in mountain streams that normally flowed copiously over white quartzite slabs completely dried up. But unfortunately, due to the wind, the sound was absolutely awful due to the excessive wind noise. But there's ways around everything, and I plan to re-record my voice in sync with auto dialogue replacement in post-production to overcome what nature throws at filmmakers recording 2,500 feet up in the mountains. So variation is the key. As you'll probably know, and you can look on YouTube and you'll see lots of things with drone shots which look absolutely amazing. But let's face it, lots of drone shots linked together after a time can be absolutely boring. The key is to use drone shots sparingly and in establishing shots, or to see things from a different perspective, alongside traditional camera, iPhone, wide angle, close-up shots. Scenic shots can be broken up with close-ups of flora and fauna in the area to add interest. Now, stabilization gear. Using stabilization gear ensures smooth motion and reduces shaky footage, improving the overall quality of your film, although you can correct this to a lesser or greater degree in post-production. When filming in the remote areas, I only use the camcorder for interviews or shots requiring a tripod or indoor filming. With long walks over rough, unpaved countryside, the camcorder is not really practical, and I use my iPhone with the Osmo gimbal stabilizer or a small camcorder with a small flexible tripod. And of course, the drone carried up in my backpack for these remote location filming, such as in May climbing Canisp up at 2,800 feet. You should also plan for movement in scenes. because it allows for more dynamic shots and enhances the narrative flow of the film. And always cutaway shots. If I go anywhere, I'm always conscious of filming as many cutaway shots as possible on any filming trip I do. Having a stock of B-roll shots is absolutely invaluable. And it'd be interesting to see what you, in the questions, to see what you think of this approach. Now, lots of practicalities, lots of planning, and I'll go through them. First of all, before I head off on a location, there is so many things to consider and so many things to check. First and foremost, for me, it's the weather forecast, because I do not intend to climb a mountain only to find out that it's pouring a rain or there's mist up at the summit. It would basically ruin it. You've really got to have good weather. So check the weather forecast beforehand on the for the proposed day of your location shooting. I also like to have the iPhone and camcorder settings set and tested and working the day before the shoot. And always I set and test out in flight the required drone settings. And what you find too is it always updates itself. So any new updates, do that all beforehand, before heading out off to the location, then finding that it basically won't work because it can't get a new update because you've no signal or you've no 4G or even 3G signal up on the hills. I also have to check no fly zones for locations chosen for the drone flights as per the documentary script. I have to contact RAF Lossiemouth because in the mountains on the west coast we have low flying exercises. I do a lot of hill climbing, or I did in my slightly younger days. I still do, but I remember climbing Arkle. It was about 3,000 feet, and two RAF jets passed below me, and the guy just waved from outside the cockpit to me. He was about 50 feet below me, just swud past. So obviously, I need to know that there's low flying exercises in the mountains or in the area where I'm filming. So I always check with RAF Lossiemouth. Also, it's handy to have battery packs and various leads to charge your drone, camcorder, mic, iPhone, and Osmo on location. The last thing you want is one of these things to run out of battery juice, and you could ruin a part of your day. I always like to record 30 seconds of ambient sound where drone location shots are filmed. Now, this assumes that I've got shelter from the wind, because usually recording anything up here is but there is days where it's very good and there is ambient sound and I can get some good recordings on some sheltered locations. And also, I always don't forget to take the headphones with me for monitoring sounds for shots taken out of the wind. I think that's quite important. These are tips that I use. You may have other ones, and it'll be interesting to see what you think of this. We have to adapt to weather changes. Sound recording is the biggest issue for me due to the constant wind in the far north. Keeping the tripod steady. I've got a fairly good heavy tripod, but even it basically is not steady enough in wind gusts, and it can be a real challenge. What I tend to use a bag of stones and drop it down from the middle section of the tripod, and that tends to steady it up a wee bit if the wind is quite challenging, shall we say. We also should utilize natural light. Understanding how to use natural light effectively can significantly enhance the mood and visual quality of the film, especially up here in, we're 59 degrees north, just subarctic. Therefore, we get very beautiful blue and heliotrope skies and unusual lighting. So it's nice to make use of that to its best possible effect. And silhouettes against the sky can add a very dramatic effect. And we should also shoot in as high, or I do always shoot in as high resolution as possible, allowing for flexibility in post-production. For example, I shoot everything if I can in 4K, because that gives you, if you've got a mistake or something in the edge of the photo, you can actually just zoom out slightly and still retain your resolution. So I find it really useful. Shoot as high resolution as possible to give you flexibility in post-production. Also vary your footage. Use wide angle. Use plenty of close-ups. movement, plenty B-roll and cutaways. And I've got a selection of they're all basically clips from the films I've taken. There's a, what do you get, razor bills there on the cliffs in Caithness. There's a little lizard thing on the flow country. The I can't remember the flycatcher. I can't remember sundew. Sorry, sundew plant, which is suncatcher, which is basically you see in areas of peat bog where there's very low nutrients. So the nutrients it gets is from the fly, and it captures it with its sticky fronds. Picture of me in a very remote area, 7 miles from the nearest single track road. And a shot there of the flow country. The flows stretch across the whole of Caithness and Sutherland, and it's a unique biodiversity, which you'll see in one of the films I'm going to show you after this. And one from Nova Scotia, a whale popping up out of the water, and a nice close-up of heather bells. So it gives you an idea, just variation, adapt to weather. You might not have that same issue in the south of England, but it's also, it's still useful to know. Now we move on to post-production, which is my favorite bit, and editing and assembling the footage, sound design, and film distribution, how you're going to make people see your film. And that is just as important as anything else. So sound in any film is 50% of telling your story, and it has to be as good as it can be. So, editing and assembling the footage. As I mentioned before, where challenges mean the recorded sound is not as good as it should be, I use automated dialogue replacement for wind damage original recorded speech, of which there is plenty from last May's shooting. In fact, there's not one recording. I took 20 recordings and there's not one that's usable. So I'm going to have to re-record. Although I recorded 20, I made plenty of mistakes. So there's only about 2 or 3 of them that should be used. And I also use the Dolby On app for studio narration, as I find it really cuts out background noise. I got a tip years ago from a sound engineer, Charles will know him, Alistair Bigger, who's a member of the virtual video group. And it was basically how to record narration, and very simply in your own house. He told me to sit in front of a wardrobe, or a open wardrobe, with a duvet lining the inside of the wardrobe with a mic in the middle. And this honestly really works well. And you can then enhance it using your video editing software. But it really does, because the duvet basically blankets all the echoes and you just get the pure sound coming out. And if you use Dolby On, which gives it the Dolby soundtrack, it's actually good, and you can record that in lossless audio, and it really does sound good. There are various tools you can use to repair damaged sound. For example, you can enhance human speech frequency band, which is about 3 kilohertz to about 15 kilohertz, whilst reducing the frequency bandwidth of the annoying background sound. For example, a car passing or a hum of a generator. You can basically target that hum frequency and eliminate it. These things are all available in post-production. So if you have a bad soundtrack, don't worry. You can actually get plenty of software now that can get rid of it and can improve it immensely. Now, for color correction, I don't do anything. I'll be interested to find out what you guys use, because I don't use anything other than my editor's color correction features, which is basic, but it actually does the job. So this to me is the fun and creative part of our hobby, and that is creating the narrative. Editing is crucial for filmmakers to craft a coherent narrative that keeps the viewers engaged throughout the film. Selecting the best footage. Make sure your best footage to tell the story effectively and maintain viewer interest. Now, like myself, I probably take huge amounts of footage, and you have to be absolutely ruthless and only put the best in. You're only putting in something like 2% of the 100% that you're actually to shoot in. And you really got to be very selective. Even though you've got really great shots, just just use the shots to tell the story that you're telling. Don't try and put too much in. Color correction on audio. The editing process includes color correction to enhance the visual appeal and audio enhancement for clarity, as I mentioned earlier. Now, sound design. Sound design plays an essential role in crafting a documentary to create an immersive experience, influencing audience engagement. But importantly, it's that emotional response that you want to achieve with the use of dialogue, narration, spot effects, and music. Carefully select your background music so that it enhances the emotional resonance and storytelling elements of your documentary. Ambient sounds and voiceovers are crucial in enriching the narrative, providing context, and strengthens the viewer's connection. But be careful not to overdo it. That was one of my mistakes I made early on. Now your film is edited. You've probably rendered it and watch it. In my case, I've got a large screen TV, and what I do is transfer it onto a disk, plug it into my TV, and I sit with an A4 book, and I just run through the whole film, taking notes to cut, lower sound, alter music, effects, move the dialogue a bit, various minor tweaks. If I'm not happy with a scene, take it out and make the changes and then repeat the process over and over again. That's what I do. It usually takes me about 12 passes before I stop and say, that's enough. There's a point you reach where you say it can't get better or it can't get worse. So that's it. Now what? Well, you want people to see your creation. And nowadays, that is via distribution mediums such as YouTube and, of course, Vimeo. Now, I have my own YouTube channel, Thor Films, and I first of all upload it into 4K, regardless of what it's shot at. I always upload it at 4K. The reason for that is that YouTube's codecs are far better on 4K than they are on HD and anything below that. So it actually is worth encoding everything at 4K. You will get far better quality. And you then make it public if you want, or you can make it private if you want to. It's usually then I start looking on Film Freeway for relevant film festivals to enter the film into competitions to achieve a wider audience. The film festivals I tend to enter some of my films into, not all, are the Arctic Film Festival, the Reykjavik Film Festival, the Oslo Film Festival. They're all nearby me anyway. The Edinburgh Short Film Festival, where two of my recent films have done quite well. And of course, the IAC's BIAF, British International Amateur Film Festival, annual festival. And you can see my channel. I can't unfortunately show you the whole thing. So it's, for example, one film there has got 5,348 views. That's Fly by Digby Neck. And it's not even a film I entered for a competition. That's one I did for my friends in Nova Scotia. I did a flyby of an area of Nova Scotia. It just went viral. It was quite good. So that's distribution. Distribution is really important, and I think it's important that we show our work to others, not just family and friends, but to enter it for festival, and especially for BF, because BF actually gives you every film that's entered gives you a critique, so you can learn from mistakes. They may say, oh, you should have tried this or you should have tried that, and it may have got a higher marking or whatever. It's really useful to get a critique on your film because it's very difficult. You may think yours is a masterpiece, but others may not. And you generally know by the number of likes that a film gets whether you've hit it on the nail or it's been, well, an also ran. Now, I've always lived up here 200 miles from my nearest club. My skills were always self-taught and via the IAC magazine up until I formed the virtual video group. So I have made over the years all the usual documentary filming mistakes to a lesser or greater degree. And the ones I've made is the film's too long, it's rambling. You've got to be ruthless with editing and maintain a good pace. Some of my earlier films, for example, my Brand Seer film was about 25 minutes long. It should have been a 15-minute film and it would have been far better. Do not attempt to cover too wide a subject in one film. I've been accused of that many times. I've tried to just overdo something, maybe split it up into two or three shorter films would have been a better idea. If you're if you're describing an area, avoid using tourist guide facts. Put your own spin on the story. It makes it far more interesting. Reduce the commentary to a minimum. Leave space for the film to breathe. That was one of my common mistakes earlier on, was trying to do too much with the narration and not give enough time to breathe in between the shots. That was a bad mistake that I've made in the past. Always have any music track at a low level, just discernible. Now, if you're making a holiday film, that can be different. But if for a documentary, generally the music track should be at as low a level as possible, just discernible. Although, if you want to create emotion, then it can be increased for that part of the film that where you're wanting to convey emotion. No single shot should be on the screen for too long, however good it looks. Use cutaways to break it up. Now, this is especially true of drone shots. Now, I still have drone shots that last for, I mean, generally speaking, I have a 3 second rule. I only have something on the screen for 3 to 6 seconds. Drone shots is difficult. Sometimes if you're going through a sweep, you've got to accept it maybe for 10 seconds. But generally, you're better using cutaways to break it up. Now, for myself, one of the things I did was I joined a local writers group about 4 years ago. It really helped me immensely with my narration and storytelling skills. And it'd be interesting to see if any of you guys in Reading are in a writers group. It really did make a huge difference, and you can see it in my films, from my early films in 2020 to now. The difference in the narration and style is very marked. And the last thing is, if possible, get people into your documentary, and that includes yourself. That's a very you really should try and get people into your documentary. That's something is difficult for me, given that the type of area that I cover. It's difficult to get people in it, but if you can, you should, or if you can't, get yourself into it. So to conclude, the beauty of being a solo amateur documentary filmmaker is that you have total control of what you create. And I think that is why my passion to make 3, 4, 5 films a year is basically just I love that creativity of taking an idea, exploring it, planning it. I mean, the planning for me is so much fun. Filming it, yes, it's fun. It's nice to see these places and it's great, but the editing is what really comes together. And you're then telling a story and you're searching, you're using all that different tools to enhance. And it's an amazing thing to be able to produce a film, and especially to produce a film and people like it. And I've got 3 films to show you this evening, but I think before we do that, we maybe should go on to questions, because I'm sure there must be questions from you.